Hello, everyone. My name is Miklos. I'm the engineering lead for NatWest OSPO and joined by Jamie Slome. Today we're going to talk to you about Git Proxy and how NatWest Group open source contribution. Git Proxy enables our engineers. So let me start in the beginning. And actually, before I would start, I'd like to understand how much of an engineer business split we have in the room. So if you know what Git and version control is, can you please raise your hand? Fantastic. If you can do an interactive Git rebase, raise your hand. Okay. If you know what Git Proxy is, raise your hand. Cool. Thank you very much. So my name is Miklos. I'm engineering lead for OSPO at NatWest. And today I'm talking about Git Proxy. So Git Proxy is a tool that allows organizations to enforce protections on the version control Git flow. And this is really important for financial services and regulated organizations because that acts as an enabler for the engineering community to actually contribute and actually consume and learn a lot through these contributions. You can see this is like an example screen of an engineer can see when they do a Git push. Basically, Git Proxy is based in between the open source repository and your developer's work desktop and acts as a bit of a man-in-the-middle kind of component, like an intersecting proxy, and communicates with the upstream repository on one end and also communicates with your engineers via the terminal command. And this is what you can see. For example, if you start a Git push, then the message comes back from Git Proxy. You have configured the following push protections and policies, license, secrets, no secrets detected, no dodgy data files, breaking your policy is detected. And actually, the author of the email address does not match the domain, so this push has been blocked. Git Proxy also protects and enables engineers to use open source project repositories. As I mentioned, it sits between your desktop and the GitHub or GitLab, any kind of remote Git endpoint. And it's highly configurable. It has a plugin-based architecture. So you can configure it and you can customize it up to your organization's requirements, really. So I'm from NatWest. We're a heavily regulated and highly secure organization. We are really, really picky about ensuring that our customer journeys are safe and secure and resilient and compliant. So it is really a good opportunity to use and adopt this tool because we can use the already enabled plugins and protections in Git Proxy, but we can also contribute and give back to the community and implement our own custom protections if we need. Git Proxy runs some kind of a workflow, which imagine that workflow as a series of tasks, series of scans or checks between the local desktop and the contribution traveling from that local desktop up to the remote endpoint. So you can really nicely configure the sequence or add some custom protections of your choice. And Git Proxy basically ensures that all ongoing, outgoing Git push operations are compliant to banking policy, which is really important for our customers. So, as you already guessed, NatWest Engineering is adopting Git Proxy as an open source engineering enabler. I'm an engineering lead for NatWest OSPO, so I have the great honor to build that Git Proxy technical capability and roll it out for the whole NatWest Group. So how does Git Proxy work? And because most of us have used Git from command line, I can show you this sequence diagram. So there are three major components in between this kind of sequence events. One of them is the Git server. Imagine it as GitHub, for example. The workstation, imagine it as your local desktop on which you are doing your development, and Git Proxy as the enabler component. So you as a developer first clone that Git repository. All the source code comes down to your machine. And then the trick when you actually enable you to contribute to the remote repository is that you rehook that repository from your local machine into the Git proxy server. So when you do Git push, that push doesn't go up to GitHub directly, but first it lands in Git proxy. Git proxy can do all those checks and push protections basically, and if it finds something, then basically blocks the whole contribution. It lets your maintainer or code reviewer review that and approve that contribution, and when everything is nice and squared off, then you do another Git push. We call it a double push, and the second Git push actually moves that contribution up to the public GitHub space. So why NatWest has decided to maintain and also to contribute to Git proxy? Let me start with a kind of a generic difference between a adoption model when you adopt a third-party component written by a third-party company, or you adopt an open source repo, because I think it's very different. So when you use a third-party component, and then during your adoption, you realize that it's just 80% matching your use cases. Something is missing, something is not quite right, or you identify a defect. Then you go back to the third party, and you either raise a defect or raise a feature request. And you start this engagement, these discussions. They come back to you and say, you know what? Yeah, we will implement that feature for you. We put it on our roadmap. It actually takes 6 months or 9 months until you get it. And sometimes when you get it, it's not exactly what you wanted, so it can have iterations. Versus if you adopt an open source repository and also contribute and give it, basically contribute back to that repository. And you are really in the sweet spot of both worlds, because you adopt something and you can also immediately customize and contribute that back and share it back to the community. So, for example, if I find a bug during adopting Git proxy or any other open source component, me or one of my colleagues can immediately fix it and make that merge request back to the original repository. A few days later, that has been merged, all the checks, all releases are done, and I can adopt a brand new fixed version of that. So the kind of the engagement loop is much closer. The engagement, the kind of adoption is much faster and much smoother than with the third-party repository. So on top of that, NatWest fully supports open source collaboration and wants really safely to empower our engineers, because I've had quite a lot of conversations with engineers roaming around from regulated and high-profile enterprises, and some of them share that they really would like to contribute because there's lots of learning, lots of positive value left on the table in the open source space. But of course, their organizations have very low appetite in taking those risks coming with contribution, because accidentally your engineer can leak out a private key to your production environment, and then things can go really wrong. So I think out of this kind of very low risk appetite, most of the high profile large enterprises are not really keen to enable engineering communities to contribute to open source. But Git proxy comes exactly into this space, manages that kind of risk level, and enables your engineers to tap into that value, not just using the already implemented features, that kind of an investment which already put into that open source repository, but also engage with those really high profile, really experienced senior engineers who are usually maintainers on these repositories, and actually get this kind of implicit coaching and training about industry best practices, which they can immediately bring into your organization and improving your engineering maturity as a positive cascading side effect of that. So open source in finance needs banks in control of their commits. That's for the risk appetite, and NatWest wants to provide this. We need that as well, but also as we kind of travel along and contribute back. We are providing this for the whole industry. We are fixing defects in Git Proxy. We are adding new features to Git Proxy. As we are adopting, we are also making sure it is rock solid from security point of view and also enterprise ready from resiliency and scalability point of view. So NatWest is a positive contributing open source citizen and wants to give back to the community. So this is not just for Git Proxy, but we have a very ambitious open source program, and we would like to grow and mature our open source community and contribute to other open source repositories and also appear on the open source space with our own projects as well. Let me share my kind of personal journey with Git Proxy. When I came to kind of in contact with this whole kind of tool, I was just playing around with open source repositories, and it was more like in my private time, with my private account, private contribution. But I immediately saw the value in how Git Proxy fills in this void for these large enterprises, and just out of professional interest, I just wanted to see the source code from inside, seeing how serious it is, how reliable it is, software architecture and all these kind of things. And so I cloned the repository. And probably you all have the feeling when you read the code for the first time, it all makes sense, and then you have only one question and you try to answer that question, and that question leads to 10 questions, and that 10 questions leads to 100 questions, and at some point you are like totally lost in that. So in the beginning, it was a bit overwhelming, but then I started really small. I basically picked a very simple, trivial defect, like a single line of problem, a single line of change can fix. And I went through the whole process, fixed the defect, wrote some tests for it, made a merge request, had a bit of an engagement with the maintainers. I think it was Jamie back then. And back and forth communication a bit, maybe a day or two later, this first fix has been merged. And it was a really kind of a quality change, because I become a contributor from outsider, I become a contributor. And then, so that was this famous pull request 474, which I added to the list. It was really just a one-liner, but it meant really much to me as an engineer actually contributing to this. And being really ambitious, the next kind of contribution was a whole command line tool, actually abstracting the administration APIs over and providing a auditable and trackable command line tool to administer the Git Proxy kind of features. And that took me a few weeks to push through. It was a much bigger kind of contribution, much bigger challenge, but through that, I much better understood how this whole software architecture of Git Proxy looks like. I become much more comfortable, kind of shuffling around, refactoring in the code, also kind of understood the concepts and the kind of the direction this code is moving towards. So kind of raised my game from okay, I'm a single defect kind of typo contributor to someone who is actively contributing to this project and kind of start to influence its roadmap. And now, as of today, being OSPO engineering lead for NatWest, I'm actually building an open source program office platform for NatWest, with one of the technical components being Git Proxy in that to enable our engineering capability. So I also like to come to you with an ask. Actually, Git Proxy needs open source contributions from FINOS banks. So we have a few financial services already contributing, like Citi, like NatWest, like RBC. But the request to all of you is to come together, like support this project, because this will enable the whole financial services industry. And it is like multiplying through the industry and making our engineering safer, more mature, and kind of having that enable us to tap into that value which is on the table at the moment in the open source programs or repositories. And let me invite Jamie to the table, and he would like to share his side of the coin as the kind of incumbent maintainer, I would say.
Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you. Thank you, Miklos. Okay, cool. Hey, everyone. Okay, bit of a maintainer's memo. we wanted this to be more about NatWest, so I'll keep it brief. That was me. No, that is me. It's not like there's a difference. Yeah, that's me. Lead maintainer of Git Proxy. I joined Citi 1.5 years ago. Prior to that, I started my career as a cyber software engineer. Wanted to kind of do my own business, had a bit of the entrepreneurial flair, and so started my own company with a friend from school, all about finding and fixing open source vulnerabilities. We fixed something like 3,500. We partnered with some of the biggest open source repositories in the world, like Vim, the text editor, and that was acquired last year by a company called Protect AI, which you can see there. And at Citi, my job is to make it easier for developers to contribute to open source. Couple of lessons. What have I learned? You know, working with the likes of Miklos, with NatWest, with RBC. Telling a story. It's important. You know, when I watch a lot of films these days, you can't help but think there's, you know, a lot of reference to already existing literature, be it Shakespeare, right? And I think that's because that's the thing that sticks with people. Is there something that's in this project that sticks with people? And if it's not, will it succeed? I would argue not. So for us, it's very much about, you know, the kind of responsibility I think we have to open source, but also the mutual benefit it gives to us. You know, everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people will say, you know, we should contribute to open source because it's a good thing to do. Well, sure, it's a good thing to do, but I find things that come with a mutual benefit are usually more sustainable. So for us, yes, I mean, there is a lot of open source that we as institutions undeniably rely on, right? There's been numbers suggesting that, you know, 90% plus of the software that is inside of our applications is open source. And I think that alludes to, one, whether we like it or not, we consume it, and two, we probably need to contribute to it, right? If we're such a consumer. So I think the story's pretty telling that, you know, maybe we're on the cusp of that change. You know, we've relied maybe for too long on the software that's been the building blocks of our applications, and you know, maybe to an extent too far. But we're turning a page, I think, and it's a positive change, right? And I think we're starting to see the benefits of that. We're hiring better engineers. We're seeing that maintainers want to be part of our organizations. You know, if you look at some of the maintainers around the world, they don't necessarily have that kind of enterprise mindset or enterprise career path. They're a bit more nomadic in nature, right? I mean, they do things like philanthropic, you know, endeavors in their own time, all whilst maintaining open source. And maybe they have their own consultancies. And I think there's a reason for that. There's a difference there. So, you know, hopefully something like Git Proxy tries to turn that page, and you know, we can start seeing benefits for us, but also, of course, for the open source ecosystem as well. Now, as part of my role, I have to wear many hats. It's a fun job. It kind of taps into what I enjoyed in the startup world. Of course, I work with and spend time with lots of enterprise organizations and vendors. So NatWest, RBC, of course, Citi. Interestingly, with NatWest and RBC, it's not something I necessarily had a huge amount of experience with, right? Engaging with entities of this size after coming from a startup where that was, you know, the only thing I ever wanted. I wanted to get into the room, have a conversation with an enterprise, you know, open source program officers, engineering leads. And so to be in that position very quickly, it's a little jarring. It's like, okay, well, you know, am I experienced for this? I don't really know how to go about the conversations. I haven't worked myself up to this. So that's been an interesting thing. And of course, I work for Citi, right? So being an open source maintainer, being paid to be an open source maintainer, as well as meet the needs and requirements of the company that I work for, right? And that's also an interesting, you know, dichotomy I haven't really had much experience with. But it's come with a lot of lessons around, you know, how to slowly adopt and slowly change the minds of, you know, why open source isn't just this, you know, risky cluster mess, but, you know, it can be considered, it can be approached. And of course, organizations like Turntable and Sonatype. So Turntable, they've got a booth outside. They've just soft launched woodchip.io, a commercial offering with Git Proxy under the hood. So it's quite cool that we've got some of these vendors starting to think about how Git Proxy can be used as a potential SaaS implementation. And then organizations like Sonatype, right, where vendors, and I think I'm starting to see this, start as contributors, I think fantastically, and start thinking about, as a result of that, where can they take consumption? Can they turn it into something they can monetize? Is this a revenue stream or not? So lots of lessons from there on that. And I won't go through the rest in the interest of times, but of course things like representing the project, making sure it grows, making sure it has a good face on things like LinkedIn, going to conferences, taking calls with different open source program officers, learning, asking questions, emails of course. Contributing, right? Obviously, I contribute to the project. I don't just maintain it. I create features. I work with, again, the likes of Miklos on things that we both have as open problems. Develop the community, of course, work on the repository in GitHub. Build out a friendly Slack channel where people feel like they can come and ask questions and say, you know what, I don't understand what Git Proxy is, what does it solve, I don't think you're doing the right thing. It's important, we want to hear from those early adopters. And of course, general maintenance, right, making sure that the project runs well, that I'm not up all night, looking through pull requests and responding to people, but such that the community can build in a way where it starts running itself. It turns into a bit of a self-sustaining engine. But of course, encourage diversity. And purely the reason for that is because we don't have all the answers, right? I think it's critical to say that in the early days of an open source project, when it's maybe not so mature, it's good. It's good to have a small group of people that can agree on a small and clear set of issues, so we're not trying to solve everything at the same time. But when it comes to contributors, it's important. They'll present us with new ideas, and of course even small changes that we hadn't necessarily thought about, that weren't even in our purview. So instead of going from A to B to C all the way to Z, we go from A to Z much quicker. So creating an ecosystem around our project where people feel like we're not in the high-rise enterprises, but we're just developers, right? We think like developers, we look like developers, we talk like developers. It's important. It encourages people to open up, and I think that's important. Investing in new contributors, critical, right? Good first issue, a fabulous label. It helps massively, right? Being able to get people familiar with the project before biting off more than we can chew is fabulous. It helps vendors get involved. It helps enterprises get involved. It's literally how Miklos started contributing and now adopting Git Proxy within NatWest, right? Something small, something not necessarily meaningless, meaningful, if anything, given where NatWest ended up. But being able to define these discrete problems that anyone in this room could take on, fixing a spelling mistake as an example, it's helpful. Right? We don't want to be seen as a project in our documentation that just has spelling mistakes listed all over the place. And the point is maybe we don't spot it, maybe we don't have the time to do it, but if someone does and that can take them on the journey to contributing and potentially consuming, great. And the point is if you invest in new contributors, take the time with them, get in a Slack call, have a phone call with them. Answer a call maybe at 11 p.m. for fun. This stuff is fun, and that's what I love about it. Citi gives me the opportunity to do something I really enjoy. All this code that I'm creating, it's all public, everyone can see it. So there's a lot more of a pride element to it, and I like that. But point here being that investing in those new contributors means that they stick around, right? So as you can see, as I've said, we're still somewhat early days, but as our contributors are growing, they're not drifting, they're sticking around. And yes, you can, the away column in the graph demonstrates almost a fixed size, but as contributors grow, I think that's a good sign. Our churn is almost staying the same as contributors quite quickly increase, so it's a good sign. Automation counts. Obviously, myself, Miklos, our team working on the project, we can't do everything. And there's a lot to be done that can be automated. So a lot of things around security testing of the code that's being created, managing dependencies, things that we depend on for our own code, making sure that code contributions that are being suggested have been tested, that they won't break the project, they won't break the distributable of it. Making sure that we're aligning with certain industry standards around security and community health, so CHAOSS and OSSF. There's great tools out there for it. All helps make sure the ecosystem for our project is sustainable. So lastly, to finish off sweetly, if you'd like to get involved, just search on any search engine or AI-based search engine. They're actually pretty cool. Git Proxy, you'll find it. You'll find our documentation site. You'll find our code base on GitHub. If you go to our docs site, you'll also find our Slack channel. Get in touch, ask questions. If you think we're doing something that's not right, that's really what I want to hear. I love new ideas. I love people being enthusiastic. But if you think we're going in the wrong direction, that's just as helpful as well. So please reach out. And I would ask. It's not necessarily the success of a project, but GitHub stars help as well. So if you have it in your heart to donate, so to speak, a GitHub star, would be very grateful. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Everyone is shocked. If you have any questions which you would like to discuss more in private setting, then we are outside having a table on the left for Git Proxy. So feel free to come, join us, and we can show you demos. We can show you the thing. So have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you.